My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
All right, guys, welcome to Property Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Kaminsky, stepping in for the fearless Dave Dubois as he's working on the next big thing. Today on the show, I've got a very special guest who's going to introduce us to the idea of an infinite plus return. You know, you're driving down the interstate and you're wondering, who owns that mobile park? And you might be wondering, well, it's probably a slightly more complicated than actually who owns it, but actually who controls it. David Jessee, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Bryce. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, no problem. I love to hear more tales of the tape, especially when it comes to creative financing. So the main thing, you go to a networking event, you're shaking hands. People are like, how'd you get started in real estate? So let's open it. Let's break the ice. What got you into real estate? And ultimately, how did you get addicted to it like the rest of us?
Man, it went from one addiction to the next. So I was into crypto, and I was pretty interested in cryptocurrency for several years, and it just got me into investing, researching investing, understanding the hedge against the dollar and
Yeah.
inflation and all of those aspects. And so that's when I started my journey. It was probably 6, 7 years ago. Going from one asset class to the next. And I started rolling over some, digital currency profits, some of my gains from trading and short-term investing, scalping, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Took some profits and put those into some real estate for some more stable long-term income.
So just a personal curiosity, are they letting you do an exchange on crypto into real estate? Like, are they letting you
So
do a same type exchange unless you have to
yeah,
tax save?
I'm not educated enough on the 1031 as far as if that would be allowed. I would assume not, because it's a different type of asset.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. So me, I just paid the gains, took the capital, put it
Yeah.
down, and
And so you've
just
been
started playing
moving
with it.
from like asset class to asset class. And like most investors, they usually, there's the saying that goes, all wealth is either held or made in real estate. And so you end up in real estate. What was your first venture into the real estate game? A flip, a buy and hold? What did it look like?
So I got started like a lot of people with wholesaling.
Yeah, I love
Uh,
it.
it, it's a pretty cost effective way to get in the door,
Mm-hmm.
to start and get see some deals, get accustomed with deals, understanding some transactions. Just
Yeah.
it's the beginning of the rabbit hole, or for a lot of people, and it was for me for sure. And I went from wholesaling into doing some flips and
Mm-hmm.
some burr, have some rentals and stuff like that. And eventually I just kind of realized that wholesaling, flipping, and burring properties to me was kind of like the rat race or the hamster wheel, where you just have to do another
Yeah.
deal.
I
You
always
know,
call it the treadmill, like it just keeps going and you got to keep going to keep going to keep going. But I like that you started in wholesaling because I think people sometimes underestimate the skills you learn in acquisitions because, like, that's the whole game. You want to be a flipper, learn to buy right. You want to be a buy and hold person, learn to buy right. You want to learn to do anything in real estate, you got to learn to buy right. So I think the guys who start in wholesaling, or girls, the people, all people that start in real estate, if they can learn to acquire, they're going to have a much easier time in their real estate career as they grow up instead of skipping that step of learning to acquire. So you started wholesaling and then you got tired of the rat race or the treadmill. And then what brought you to the next piece of your journey there?
well, at some point I decided that multifamily was going to be the way out. So I know I wanted to get involved in syndications, apartment
Mm-hmm.
complexes, mobile home parks, storage centers, just anything larger, more units. And instead of owning all of a small property, owning a percentage of a larger property, maybe less work, just more of a
Mm-hmm.
passive, situation. So I started looking into multifamily. and I got in some masterminds and realized that multifamily is really a team sport,
Yeah.
and which is completely different than residential. There's a lot of competition in your individual markets for residential.
Yeah.
Although multifamily is very competitive, it's easy to team up with people, like-minded individuals that want to do deals, that have different skill sets. And I kind of took that approach, try to put together a team of people with different skill sets than I have, and different talents, and we take on different roles, and we're really trying to acquire a lot of real estate.
All right. And so did you end up actually acquiring any multifamily like apartments or anything like that? Are you still working on that, or how did that go for you?
So I really tried to get into some apartments, and I started looking at multifamily about 2 years ago. And
Hmm.
like everything else, they're just going to the moon. Cap rates were going down,
Yeah.
prices were going up,
Yeah.
and then interest rates popped, and they're going crazy. So like every deal that I would underwrite, just there was no way to make it work. I could not personally. I have not been able to find a deal from a broker or a wholesaler on the multifamily side that just really penciled out where we could just purchase it, just syndicate it and purchase it without, having to really get a major reduction. So during underwriting, it got to the point where, if it wasn't within 10% or 20% of what we thought was possible, we didn't even send an offer because it was just way too high.
Yeah. It's kind
Um,
of turning into like a buy, hold, and pray. People are having to bring money to the table on these things. Now, granted, both of us sitting here going, yeah, at the end of the day, in 10 years, like those buildings are going to be worth more, and you just got to be able to hold on. So you didn't get into any like apartment deals. So what then? Where did you go? You're like, okay, I got this team. I got things going. I know the game. I know how to put together a team. Where did you take your talents then?
so we started pushing into mobile home parks,
Mm-hmm.
um, based on the premise of affordable housing just not getting any better.
Yeah.
It is definitely the most affordable form of unsubsidized housing in the United States. So, for me, I don't know how you're going to have a problem with vacancy on the most affordable living quarters possible. So that was a little bit of safety there. And
Yeah.
also, I know a lot of people don't understand those. They're a little bit harder to finance as well. So there are
Yeah.
some major hurdles. And I figured if we could conquer a few of these major hurdles, we could potentially have a strategic advantage and purchase some parks.
Yeah. Well, as far as my understanding, which is limited, they don't own the units. They own the units. I guess it's a mix. So tell me,
It's a
how
mix.
does one valuate a mobile home park? Just for the people at home and for me too. I haven't never had to sit down and done the numbers. So just the quick and dirty, how do I evaluate
Quick,
a mobile home park?
quick and dirty. So if all of the homes are owned by the tenants and they're really just renting land, okay,
Mm-hmm.
then it's going to be comparable to a cap rate on a multifamily building. Okay, maybe a slightly higher cap rate, but fairly comparable.
And so
If
what are your responsibilities after if they own the building, what are your responsibilities as like I guess this is a true like landlord. You're really just owning the land underneath
Yeah,
these
so it's going
units.
to be the infrastructure from like the paving or driveways, any kind of rainwater, sewer runoff,
Yeah.
the septic systems or sewer systems, the water taps, the electrical taps,
Like
those
services, you're essentially
services,
a little city.
maybe some landscaping and those sort of things.
Okay, so you're not really dealing with the tenants and toilets inside. You're dealing with the actual like services. So you're kind of like a little municipality almost.
Kind of. So in some parks, they're 95% tenant owned. But then again, like we're currently buying a park that's 95% park owned homes.
Hmm.
So a lot of investors will shy away from deals that have park owned homes because they don't want to be landlords,
Yeah.
which I understand. But at the same time, if you can get those at the right basis, at the right price, then maybe it makes sense. So it just really depends on how much you're paying for the private property, the mobile home,
So if I had to go,
in comparison to the land. So if you're getting the mobile homes very cheap,
yeah, go ahead.
I lost you there, Bryce.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a glitch there. I mean, we are talking across the world, so why not, right? It's bound to happen once in a while. But I was just gonna say, like, with all the bricks and sticks and the
Yeah.
numbers on the inside, what should someone expect to pay if I just was like, I got cash? What does something like that cost? And then how do you guys do that creative finance you were talking about?
So I think you're breaking up a little bit. Were you asking how to evaluate, or how much you would pay for
Yeah, how
a mobile
much
home
and yeah,
park,
how
or per
much?
space?
Like the whole deal, like how
So
much?
that's going to be relative to your area. So you might be in an area where the lot rent is $250 a month. Well, that lot's going to cost you less than if it's a park where the lot rent is $600 a month. So just like any other purchase or rental purchase, you have to figure your cash on cash return and how much return you're going to get based off your financing and stuff like that. So it's hard to say, hey, lots are worth 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30, 40, 50,000. It just really depends on a case by case
So what are
situation.
you
So it's
seeing?
hard to give you a flat price.
Yeah, what are you seeing on average for a cap rate that would be acceptable for someone who's just dabbling in that, David?
So typically you're going to want your cap rate to be higher than your interest rate,
Mm-hmm.
or definitely not lower than your interest rate. So right now we're seeing 8.5%, 9%. So you're going to want your cap rate to be in that 9% or greater.
Mm-hmm.
Which you are seeing these advertised in that 7, 8, 9, 10% cap rate. Sometimes you'll see them advertised end of year 2 cap rate 10, 12%. You can't look at the pro forma. I mean, you can look at a pro forma, obviously, but you have
Mm-hmm.
to verify all the information. So I'm seeing them offered at 6, 7, 8, 9% today, and interest rates are in that 8.5% range. So it's comparable to the overarching interest rate that's going on the environment right now.
Okay, so that all being said, like we talked about at the top, you don't actually buy these things so much as you end up controlling those things. So how did you end up getting into, I mean, we must have taken that multifamily kind of syndication mindset over to these mobile home parks. How are you putting those things together in kind of a bird's eye view? Because it's probably more complicated than the time we have today, but just give people like the Coles notes of how you're able to buy these things in some cases, no money down.
Yeah, so you can syndicate a large mobile home park. I mean, you can syndicate it just like an apartment building, uh, general partners, limited partners. You can absolutely do that, and that was originally my mindset, and that's what helped me get over some of the fear of looking for bigger deals, because I was confident in my network that we were able to raise a 500,000, 1 million, 2 million if needed on a large park. So I started looking at these bigger deals. I have not syndicated a mobile home park. I have done joint ventures with other operators and some investors on a few deals, but 3 of the 4 of the last deals that we've contracted have been seller finance or creative finance, to the point where we have an infinite return. That means we're bringing zero down, but we
Mm-hmm.
actually are getting a little bit money back at closing. So it's kind of infinite plus 10% back at closing.
So you end up, and when you say closing, you mean like in a year or 2 years after the terms expire on the vendor financing, or where are you getting that extra money, like on
No,
closing?
at closing when we purchase, day one.
Okay. So they're giving you a mortgage then. You're getting vendor finance and you're getting like a profit on closing because you've negotiated such a deal with the owner.
Yes. So a lot of times for a deal structure like this, you're going to have 2 lenders,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes 3 lenders. It depends. There's about 3 or 4 different strategies, but in the high level view is bank A will have a first position for whatever amount, let's call it 70%, or let's call it 60%.
Yeah.
Okay. The seller has a position of 50%. So we have 110% financing at that point.
Okay. Yeah.
So that extra 10%, in a nutshell, comes back to us, and we can use that for CapEx, fixing the roads. We could do septic repairs. We could buy a mobile home or 2 or 3 or 4.
So
It
like
just depends
capital
on,
improvement, you've got cash on closing
yep,
by over lending on it because the seller's in agreement because they've got leverage. They've paid it down to a point where they can actually lend you a note on that thing.
correct. Correct.
Nice, nice. So when you got started in real estate, like, did you think you'd be doing what you're doing now?
Uh, when I got started in real estate, I had no idea what in the world I was doing.
Yeah.
So I tried everything. I wanted to learn everything. I want to learn everything about creative finance. I've done tons of creative finance deals on the residential side, from master lease options, sandwich options, novations, wholesale deals, fix and flips, burr strategies, all types of seller carry. The Getting into the commercial space for me was very scary. Moving into
Hmm.
larger, scarier deals here, we're talking you're signing on lots of debt. Um, but when you add that seller carry or vendor carry back at a rate that is 0%, 2%, something like that, it balances out this 9% lending climate we're in. My seller's carrying about half, my bank's carrying about half, my bank's getting 9, my seller's getting 2. So our blended rate is, the rates people were paying 4 or 5 years ago. So we're able to use the time machine virtually, in essence, to purchase at a rate and quantity of properties much faster than what I'm seeing many other people, at least in the mobile home space and the multifamily space. There are some teams, some masterminds that are like absolutely destroying, taking down lots and lots of deals.
Hmm.
Uh, but they're few and far between. So with these types of strategies, if you know how to find a seller that's willing to negotiate a little bit, because maybe they have a lot of mobile homes that are rusty and maybe it doesn't look great, or
Hmm.
maybe it needs landscaping or some road work. They know it's hard to finance because they've tried to sell this park and someone tried to buy it and it didn't go through. So
So that's the main reason that you're getting that 110% because you need that 10% against it to really make it worth anything. And they understand that because they're looking at
yes,
the rusty buckets and going, yeah, I know it's not, she ain't too pretty, but there's money here. And you're like, yeah, if you're going to over lend on me, like if you're going to give me 110 through some creative finance. And I love it's not, the first part is always creative. And then the second word is finance. And you do need to be very creative. And it's almost more important that you're finding vendors that are open to having the conversation because sometimes it's just over their head. And that's, I think the main skill with creative
yes,
finance is explaining to people how it works. Because if you don't even know as a person bringing the contract and you're just kind of like, trying to talk your way into a creative finance deal, you think if you're confused, definitely the person you're trying to convince to do a creative finance deal is going to be confused. So you
I
definitely have to have that expertise.
I absolutely agree. You have to keep it simple. A confused seller is not a seller. A confused buyer is not a buyer. Um, you can make it very simple. Hey, I'll pay you $1 million. Will you take, 25,000 a year until it's paid off? Okay, well that's seller finance, and that's just like the most basic way you could possibly look at something. So there are specific ways to approach the conversation. Typically in the commercial side, you will see a listing that says the seller will carry.
Mm-hmm.
Seller will carry on a, let's say, $1 million
Yeah.
property, seller will carry 100,000. Well, that doesn't really help us a lot, right?
No, it
So
doesn't.
we have the conversation. We see if they'll carry 2 or 3 or 4, or what if we give you more money instead of the million? Let's give you 1.1 and have you carry 4 or 5.
Yeah, so
So
like terms or price, that's always been my motto when buying real estate. Is like you can either win the terms or the price. You can't have both. So if you want a great terms deal, you're probably gonna have to give up the price. And if you don't want a great, if you don't care too much for the terms, you're buying a flip or whatever, 30 days to close, it's all about price and give them all the terms. So in creative finances seems, and maybe you could speak to this for terms versus price. What's your opinion? Can you have both?
very rarely you can have both. I mean, but if the price, if you're getting your price and you're getting your term, then your price was pretty good and your term was pretty good. So, yes, we can do something where you pick the price and the term, but you have to be on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're on planet Earth, we can maybe do something. If you're on the moon, well, I'm going to have to dictate how this money comes to you, as far as, okay, maybe we're going to do a 5-year balloon, or, well, maybe it's going to take me longer to increase the value of this place to refinance out. So maybe a 5-year balloon won't work. Maybe
Yeah.
we could do this deal, but I need a 10-year balloon, or I need an 8-year balloon, because it's going to take me 8 years to raise the rents to a value to where I can sell this property, or I can refinance 70% of this property and clear my debt
Yeah, with
and
you and
still
and,
still
and
have
move
nothing in
on.
the deal.
Well, what I like uh that you said there was that you have to dictate the terms typically when you're buying property. If you're an acquisitions person out there, someone looking to put together deals, you better get good at leading that part of the negotiation, because I almost feel like when there's no realtors involved, and sometimes there's realtors involved, but typically when you're dealing with the seller directly, there's probably not a realtor involved. And especially with creative financing, you better be both the realtor for him, the realtor for you, the closing person for you. You're helping them close their side. You're probably doing the paperwork. Like there's a lot of moving pieces, and keeping that all in line so that it actually gets to a conclusion, because you can do a lot of talking when you're talking about term deals and do nothing. Like, oh, that sounds like a great deal. Send me the paperwork and I'll look it over. And it's just like, okay, where's this going? So, let's talk about that. In the future, you've been, probably waist deep or neck deep in this real estate thing now with what you're doing. Where do you see things going over the next 3 years?
I think the general climate's going to stay about the same. I think interest rates are going to hover for a while. Institutions will keep purchasing. Currently, I don't think that's really going to slow down. So single family
Yeah, I don't
homes are
think
going to
so
stay
either.
expensive. On the commercial side, I think prices are going to be flat for a little while. If interest rates do drop, let's say in 3 years they drop a good bit, well, values will go up in 3 years. Or if they drop really hard in 5 years, values will go up in 5 years. And if we purchase now, if you can purchase now while commercial rates are 8.5%, well, that value is going to be worth more if those rates go down to 6.5% or 5%. I'm personally hoping and praying that interest rates don't go to 12, 13, 14, 15%. It would crush the economy, in my opinion. It would crush my business as well. But I
Sounds like
think that
another bailout. Wouldn't be the
yeah,
first time.
I think interest rates might go up just a hair, and then they're going to start tapering down, and we're going to really slingshot. Values are going to slingshot, in my opinion. So I really think the prudent move is to purchase now if
On
you can.
terms.
Yes,
Yeah, because I'm
absolutely.
finding a lot of times now, it's not so much about the purchase, but that you're purchasing rates from, say, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They got a mortgage 5 years ago or 3 years ago. They got 2 more years. And I think 2 more years at their interest rate might be enough to skip the hurdle. So I like to ask this question to guys who, been in the game. What's one piece of advice you give to someone who's just starting out?
link up with a team. Definitely either link up with a team or a partner or a mastermind. Definitely get around people that are doing deals at a high level and do what they're doing. Pay for the groups, pay for the courses, do bigger deals, do more deals, get the experience under your belt. Because the more deals you do, the more deals you will be able to do. And if you're on the sidelines right now because of interest rates and prices and all of that, it's not going to get better. If you're not going to do it, then don't do it. If you're going to be a real estate investor, it's time to do something. So that's what I would say
It's
to somebody
always
starting
time.
out.
Yeah. It's always time to go. So, time flies when we're having fun here. If people want to get a hold of you, David, how do they find you on the Internet of Things?
Very easy. Just go to carolinacashflow.com and my phone number is on there. Shoot me a text, or I have a form where you can answer some questions and sell me your house, or you could invest in
Link up
what
with
we're
you,
doing, or whatever.
We can get a hold of David Jessee real easy. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. I had a blast. And until next time, guys, we'll see you on the next episode.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.